Even the people that say close it down, there are some that are saying close it in the ocean and open it in the river. Well, that's not going to happen. We're going to make sure that we have parity between the two. Like I said, if the ocean opens, then we'll try to open some areas inland. But the big negative is that a lot of people are saying to me and others that are in leadership roles is, well, what happens if we catch too many in the ocean? What happens if we go catch Sacramento fish and we go pile up a bunch of Sacramento fish and then they don't return and only 8,000 fish, 5,000 fish come back to the sack again and we catch 1,000 of them in the ocean? That's 20% or 15% of all of the sack fall fish that are even in existence. Remember, 3 years ago, the fish that we're fishing on this year in 2025, 3 years ago was 2022, where we had one of the lowest returns of sack fall ever. 61,000 fish came back in 2022. 61,000. And the model was predicting well over 122,000. So the interesting thing about that is that when you look at those numbers and you know how accurate they've been over the year, they've been historically wrong by huge amounts. Now, the model does build in autocorrelation to try to bring it down because we thought they were going to show up with a number of like 270 to 280. But the autocorrelation, they really brought it down to that 165. And I think that that's actually probably a closer number. My guess, on the record, I think there's about 184,000 sack fall fish that are out there that'll actually come home. If the seasons close, no fishing in California at all, I'm going to guess 184,000 come back to the Sac, Feather, American, and Yuba River. That does not count the McCollum. Remember, the McCollum is separate. It does count McCollum strays if they end up in the American or Feather or Yuba or Sacramento River. It counts. But they do not count the actual return to the McCollum River. That is an enhancement fishery. That is partial mitigation, but majorly enhancement and funded by the salmon stamp through the commercial fleet. They pay through their licensing a lot of money to have those extra fish mitigated and raised so that they can go harvest them. So if the model's wrong, right? If the model's wrong and it's over forecasted again and we all go fishing, guess what's going to happen? It's all our fault. They're going to blame it on us. And they're going to say the fishermen went out there and they caught too many fish. And unfortunately, it's just, it's a bad thing. And we're going to get all the negative PR. You can count on it. Just like we got the negative PR in 2022. Because there was some over harvesting and overperforming of what the model predicted. The model predicted that the one fleet, the commercial fleet was going to catch this much, and they caught tens of thousands more than the model predicted. The model predicted that the wreck fleet in a few years was only going to catch a certain amount, and we overperformed, right? And so if we overperform, then you're going to hear a little bit of the blame shift towards the industry and towards the private salmon anglers. If we go fishing and we overperform the model and then we don't make the 122,000 minimum escapement, you're probably going to see a listing of the fish, and we might lose fishing forever unless we go to a completely different management style. And you could see other negative consequences from that. I don't know if everyone's looking at the whole picture. But when you work in salmon management every single day like I do, and you kind of look at, everything the model says, everything that has actually happened with harvest through the ocean harvest model, you look at the amount of effort, the amount of truncating down the days. There's just a lot of variables. So we really don't know what will happen. And it's too, unknown. And so there's a little bit of avocation for saying, hey, let's go out there and find out, right? Because if we don't go find out, then we don't know for the future, right? We don't know what will happen if the ocean opens up in 4 days, what we will catch. Maybe we all go out fishing and nobody catches any Sacramento fish, right? And if that happens, then that wouldn't be a bad thing technically, because we don't want to catch Sacramento fish. But because the ocean is a mixed stock fishery, you're catching Oregon stocks, you're catching Klamath Trinity stocks. You're catching coastal Chinooks from all the rivers, from the Smith all the way down. You're catching all the San Francisco stocks, the San Joaquin, the Sacramento. You're catching all of those stocks, and then any other coastal streams that might have produced any fall Chinook over the last couple of years. And then, the McCollum is included in the San Joaquin. But that's what you all need to understand when it comes to understanding the process of the way that model works, the way it opens up the season, and providing opportunity for you all. And so, again, that's kind of all I'll say as of now. I will do another live video right before the council starts, after public comment period closes, under typing in your public comment. So I'll do another one just to kind of update you on making sure everybody knows how to make public comment and do whatever you want to do. So if the fishery opens up and you advocate for opening it up, you'll see the 4-day opener, and then you'll see a small inland season opening up that will be very, very limited. If the ocean closes, you'll see closure there. I think you're going to see a lot in the commercial fleet won't be able to go to work because to get your boat ready costs thousands of dollars. And in order to go catch 10 Chinook, that's not worth it economically, right? That's at $150 a salmon, that's $1,500. So if it costs $3,000-$4,000 to get ready, buying wire, buying bait, buying hooks, buying all the things they need, prepping the boat, and then the man hours it takes to get a few employees to get everything ready, to go out there to make $1,500, you're not going to spend $4,000. At least most businesses won't. So I think you're going to see a lot of commercial side not engage in the fishery this year, and trying to file for disaster. Now remember, a disaster can be filed as long as there's an 80% loss. But that's only if the state of California is willing to file a disaster. So those of you that are in the commercial fleet and in the business side, you might want to, make your comments about that, where it says, although we would like to have the 4 days to go fishing, it's still a full disaster. And we do recommend that our governor file a disaster to the federal government for disaster relief. And so you can do that as well. So I encourage that avocation on behalf of the industry side. For everyone else on the recreational side, if you want to go out to catch your fish, advocate to go do that. And if you want to advocate for closure, you can advocate for that. So there's all those options. So now I'm going to go to the inland side real fast, couple of minutes, real quick. So after April 16th, then there's a 1-month period until the Fish and Game Commission in May, and that's handled by the state. And then on that side, there is avocation for two things. There is avocation for an inland fishery to mirror the seasons. And then there's also, for the first time, there's a group of people that have been advocating at the Fish and Game Commission to open a bubble fishery for the first time in the state of California off the San Mateo coast, for a group that particular has a net pen project out there that want to go catch fish in September up to 3 miles out in state waters only, to go catch those fish. And so there's avocation for that. Again, same thing. It's a mixed stock fishery. You have no idea whether or not you're catching those fish or not. It's that gamble, right? Do we want to shake the dice and roll them? If we shake the dice and roll them and we're wrong, it could cost us a lot of heartache in the future. And it could cause us a lot of problems in the future. If we shake the dice and we're right, then we know that we can open up these short little fisheries and it's going to have this much effort. And the model will hopefully start being able to predict that if we have short 4-day openers, that's what to look for as far as the effort and the catch and the harvest. So that's kind of how that works. Now, I had mentioned that I thought there was a few more sackfish out there than was really out there. And the reason that I believe that is because I've looked at the cohorts and the survival rates 3 years ago. In 2022, most everything that came back to our rivers died. Almost every salmon. I don't know what the number is, but it's in the high 90s. And the reason I know that is because we were seeing 72-degree water in 2022 September in Red Bluff last year. We were seeing 80-degree water in Verona at the mouth of the Feather. We were seeing 82 to 85-degree water below Discovery Park, below the American. And we remember, if you don't, go back, look on this Facebook, go back to 2022, and see the live videos of us posting dead gill rot fish floating down the river, dead fish dying of pre-spawn mortality in the river, fish dying up on the banks before they could even spawn because there was no cold water. The entire inland season was canceled basically in 2022. And even though there was full ocean fisheries in 2022, the in-river guides, the businesses, were out of business because there was nothing biting. There was very few opportunities. There was a few people that were able to even go and catch a few fish and, line a few fish, I should say. But they weren't biting because salmon don't bite in 70-degree water. So, those of you that have been fishing for salmon for years know that. So if the average temperature was 68 degrees plus, you're not going to see a lot of catch and harvest, and you're not going to see any successful spawning. And that's what happened in 2022. So everything that naturally spawned in the rivers, the Feather, American, and Sac, died in 22. 61,000 total fish came back. They said made it into the escapement, but all those eggs that laid in the gravel are dead. Okay, because they need 56-degree temperature or less in order to survive. So all those fish are gone. Now, those are the fish that are supposedly going to be out there this year in 2025. So how do we guess that abundance, right? How do you know what that number is for this year? They say it's 165, 655. My guess is 184. Well, what you do is you look at the cohorts of hatchery fish and you say, okay, well, we had 11 million that got released out of Coleman in really good water in the spring of 23, right? If we would have had good spawning water in 22, we would have had a real good season. But because the State Water Control Board shut off all the water in 2022 for agriculture, you had no water in your rivers for salmon. So a lot of people that live in San Francisco love to say, don't ship any water down the river. Don't ship any water down the river. Well, guess what, folks? They don't live near the river. They don't understand how the operations work of the river. You have to have water leaving Shasta and leaving Keswick in order to have cold water in the river. If you don't, and you only have 4,000, 5,000 CFS coming out of Keswick, which is what was going on in 2022, you get 80-degree temperatures downstream and everything dies. It won't live. You can't even get 60, 62-degree temperatures above Red Bluff. We saw 68, 69. We saw a lot of 64 in the barge hole, which is right at the mouth of Battle Creek, river mile marker 274 back then. So if all those are discounted and gone, now you have to look at the hatchery releases from 2023 spring, right? March, April, May releases from the Coleman, Nimbus, and Feather River hatchery. Well, Coleman released that 11 million, and they said that they had pretty good survival out to chips. They're thinking they had somewhere around 20 to 25% survival. So roughly 2 to 2.5 million fish made it out to the ocean. Now, they swam around for 3 years, so there's natural mortality, sharks, sea lions, seals, natural death, hook and line mortality from last year when Oregon caught our fish. They caught 3,700 Sacramento fish up there, and they're going to be open up there again, so there's impacts up there. But you start looking at, what are those numbers and what does that mean, right? Well, if around 2 million out of the 11 million made it to the ocean, then you can start estimating what will be the percentage of those 1%, 2% to come back as adults that will make it all the way back after fishing, after the season. So that could be somewhere, a rough guess of 20 to 50,000 adults that could come back to the Upper Sac and to Coleman, right? Mainly Coleman, because the natural spawners are dead. They're gone. There's not going to be any coming back that are natural spawning. If they come back to the river or the tributaries and spawn, more than likely they're an F1, F2 generation from the Coleman National Fish Hatchery, or they're from the McCallum, Feather, or American River, and they straight up the river and they'll spawn in the river. Now, we want that to happen so that we can start rebuilding the Sacramento River. But what we need to understand is how many fish will actually come home that from the fish released. That's how you estimate abundance. That's the correct way to do it. You look at individual cohorts, you look at the releases, you look at the survivability rate, and then you can start modeling those numbers. So then you look at the Feather and the American and you start going, okay, well, the Feather and the American had much better survival because they trucked all of their fish. They didn't release them all in river. Some were released in river, and some in river releases had 30-40% survival to the Benicia or Golden Gate, at least past chips, according to some of the data that I've preliminarily looked at. So you start going, okay, well, how many fish do we have coming out of the Feather? We had 9 million. How many, and you start saying, okay, we had a couple of million of those sent in. We had 6 million of those, 7 million of those trucked. And then the American had 4 million trucked. So you're looking at 11 million trucked fish. And the average on good water, when there's more than 10,000 CFS going through the Golden Gate, okay? Don't believe everybody in Southern California that says water's wasted to the ocean. It's not. It's not wasted to the ocean. If you don't have 10,000 CFS minimum outflowing to the ocean, you don't have survival of your salmon. You lose them. You don't have survival of any of your other anadromous species, and then you don't get upwelling, which causes food for all animal life in the ocean. So biology 101, people. So don't believe me? Go ahead and look it up for yourself. But you got to understand that you've got to have outflow to have salmon survival. You can't just capture all water in the reservoirs, limit the amount of water coming to the river, and then pump everything south of the delta. It doesn't work that way. That's what causes collapse in the ecosystem. And so we have to be aware of that. Do I believe that there should be water for most? Yes. For most people, yes. For individuals, yes. But that's not what's happening for the water that is being diverted to Southern California, south of the delta. It's not all just for people. There's a lot for corporate agriculture. There's a lot going in water storage down there between San Luis Reservoir, between water banks, between underground water storage. You don't believe me in any of that? Go ahead and look it all up. I'm not going to get into it today. But the point being is that in 2023, we had 10,000 outflow, which means good survival. So fish actually made it. Okay, so there's a chance to have more of a 2 to 3% possible survival rate out of all those 11 million. So if you did 2%, that's 220,000 adults. 3% is 330,000 adults, plus the Coleman fish that I mentioned before, plus the couple million that were released in river. So if you start looking at those numbers on a low side, you're looking at somewhere between 245,000. Okay, 245,000 abundance this year. And you're looking at upwards of 375,000. That's where my guess is of the actual fish swimming in the ocean in the Sacramento Index from the hatchery releases, which makes sense. You got about 30 million smolts, 1%, it's about 300,000. Okay, so if we look at those numbers and we go, okay, well, you just said you only think there's 184 coming back to our rivers in closed fisheries. But now I just contradicted myself and said, I just said there could be 240 to 375,000 fish out there. So how did I get, where's the disconnect? Well, the 11 million fish that are trucked, okay, they don't all come home to the rivers. Because we truck all these fish for survival increase, you sacrifice the stray. And so you get a huge stray rate, 50-60% on the American fish, on those 4 million, and the feather fish, depending on the release site, as low as 10% and as high as 35%. So those fish don't come back. And now I know what some of you are going to say. Well, that's why we have the McCallum fish that stray into the American every year. 30 to 40% of the run in the American are moke fish. And they are. Some years over 50%. And so there's a lot more going into it than what just common people can just calculate real quick. You have to actually think about each individual cohort, how they survived, what's the stray rate of each of those cohorts. And that's when, if you do that math, you'll come down to a number somewhere between 175 and 190,000. And so I guessed at about 184. I've been pretty dang close. And that's without fishing. So if there's fishing and my number's right, then you would take the 184 minus the total amount of fish caught in the ocean and then minus out the total amount of fish caught in the river, and then you would get your escapement. If my number is low and the 165's low and there actually, is 203, 275, 350 out there, you want to catch the fish that are going to stray. You don't want to catch the ones that are going to come home, right? And that's where we could get in trouble. As I started this live video, I said we could get ourselves in trouble. Well, that's where we could get in trouble, is that if we go out there into a mixed stock fishery in the ocean and we start harvesting and we harvest the ones that were going to come home, or we actually get main stem sackfish, that's where it could hurt us. Because the fish that return to Morgan Hill, Napa River, Lagunitas, the coastal streams, all the strays that go all there, all the strays in the San Joaquin system, Tuolumne, Stanislaus, San Joaquin, McCallum, none of those fish count, okay? None of those. The fish that end up in the deep water channels, in the rice fields, in the canals, the ones that you see dead all over in Stockton Port, the ones you see that are all lost in the Delta, none of those fish count, okay? So that's where there's this difference between the number, right? And that's why people out in the ocean for years have been saying the ocean's loaded. I don't understand how there's not this many fish coming home. Because the advocacy for years from the last closure all the way up until now has been to truck all the fish out to the ocean. And by doing that, you're sacrificing the returning fish, which is now affecting us on our escapement numbers, which creates closures. So that's the understanding of it. So I hope that makes more sense in a mixed stock fishery. I'm going to kind of leave it there. Make sure you go to pcouncil.org, check it out, sign up, put your comments in, any of the Ds, D1, D2, D3, D4, D5, D6, D7. You can put your name down. You can comment on all of them. You can make whatever you want to say and put it in there for what you want in the ocean fishery. Remember, the council does not do inland fishing, but they did this year under the two alternatives write a quota in there for river from 6,548 up to 17,080. So you could make comments there of which alternative you want because of the amount of inland fish. So even though the inland fishery, there's no way 17,000 fish are getting caught. It's going to be really hard to catch 6,000 fish. But if you vote for alternative 2, then you'll see more fish allocated to the river, which then would not be caught, but it would be transferred into escapement, which helps the species and helps rebound it for our kids and our grandkids and for the future of all the businesses. So I'll stop there. Go to ncgasa.org to sign up to support us. Make sure you go to the YouTube channel, smash the subscribe button. We have a huge striped bass derby April 12th, April 13th in Colusa. The last day to sign up is April 10th. It's going to be a huge event. We got vendors there. We got barbecue. We got raffles. We're going to have a couple of really nice items. If you want to help donate something to support the great organization of NorCal Guides and Sportsmen's Association, please get in touch with us. Email ncgasa530@gmail.com. You can send an email there. You could reach out to myself or Amy, and you could tell us what you want to donate, or if you need help signing up, get a hold of Amy, and she will be glad to walk you through the process, get everyone signed up. Guides, we're encouraging you to get into the Derby. There's a big $1,000 bonus each day for the guides. It's 2 individual day tournaments, but we combined, if you fish both days, you qualify for the Grand Champion $2,000 prize. We're giving away over $15,000 in cash and prizes. There's over $12,000 in cash just in the tournament. Then there's the raffle and everything else right there in Colusa. We got some great sponsors already. that have always been there for us. Sims Fishing Gear Products, Johnson's Bait and Tackle, Kittles Outdoors. We've got Shoreline Marine. We've also got the city of Calusa that have always been huge into supporting us. And we want to thank everyone. So make sure you call your guide, book a guide. If you need help, if you need to find a guide for the Striped Bass Derby, reach out to us. We've got a few guides on the list that are still available, and we want to see everyone there. Normally we have 200 plus people. It's all about the kids. There's going to be prizes for the kids. It's going to be a great event. So please go to ncgasa.org today. Sign up for the Striped Bass Derby. If you can't make it, then at least go to our page, buy a hat, buy a shirt. That's a great way to support this great organization. Renew your membership, please. That way we can continually grow our membership and continually fighting for you as one of the largest fishing organizations that's left in the state of California, fighting every single day for you and for your future of salmon, steelhead, sturgeon, striped bass, shad, all anadromous species, and all of our lake fisheries as well. And all of our fisheries in Northern California, including the ocean fisheries, including the Bay and Delta fisheries. We're fighting for all of you so that we can keep building this to get it better and get it back to what it used to be 25 years ago, just short 25 years ago. I know there's a lot of people around that don't even remember that, but the salmon fishing used to be unbelievable back then. I'm going to answer a couple questions right now, so put your questions in the chat. And I'm going to get done here in the next 3 minutes. We're going to keep this under an hour. I know a lot of you are shocked, like James talking for less than an hour. Here we go. If they think they can, then they will. They want, yeah, Kevin, that's a good comment. Mark Joseph, is the commercial license more than what 10 fish bring? Are they even going to bother? Possibly not, Mark. Yeah, there's a roughly 1,000 salmon permits in the commercial fleet. But I believe in 2022, the last time we were open, there was roughly like 500 of those permits. Half made a landing. So, you know, some of those people do dock sales where they just sell their fish for cash and they don't even report the sales. So I see a lot of those boats wanting to have a fishery, like the small, short, you know, boats that are under 40 feet, I'll say, or under 36 feet roughly, that can just go right out of their port, try to catch 10 salmon, come back and sell them right on the dock for $250 a piece or $200 a piece. Those commercial permits are probably going to advocate for a season, but the larger vessels that have to go catch 30 to 100 salmon a trip in order to profit, those people won't be able to fish. They won't be able to engage. So on the commercial side, there will be a daily trip quota, and there's a hard cap quota. Once they hit their number, they're done fishing too. And the same thing goes that they've advocated for a regular short fishery and a credit card fishery in the September, October fall fishery timeline. So hopefully that answers your question there. You guys are welcome. Scott, I think I explained the 165 if the model's off. If it's plus or minus off of the consequences, if it's off minus, like it's been historically, we're in deep trouble and we're going to get the blame. If it's under forecasted, which it could be, and I believe it is a little bit this year, maybe the 4-day short opener might not be a bad idea. And, you know, it possibly could create the opportunity, but is it going to keep everyone in business? Doubtful. Like I said, I still think it's a fisheries disaster. So if you are a business and advocating to open, I would recommend that you still, you know, advocate for the disaster to be filed because, you know, whether or not you're fishing a few days is not going to, you know, keep your business afloat, I don't think. Last question I see in here, Robert Dunn. Do we have any results for the experimental PBT releases? Great question, Robert. Not yet. But I was on a meeting last week that went most of the day, and we did talk a lot about all of the PBT releases since 21. The unfed fry, 2 million out of Coleman. Those fish possibly could have showed up, but there was so few of carcasses counted in the main stem of the Sacramento River that you didn't see enough fish to actually come back to find those code wire tags. So I think this will be the year in fall of 25 where we will start seeing some of those fish show up through parental-based monitoring, not code wire tags. So hopefully we'll start seeing that, and we'll see things as they move on. And I want to thank everyone very much for watching and all of the support. Please, to support us, there's a couple things you can do. Again, share this video. It helps our outreach and it engages more and new members. Go to our website, ncgasa.org, sign up for a membership, sign up, buy a hat or buy a shirt or just buy a sticker. Anything you can do supports this organization and helps build up our funds so that we can continually advocate and fight for you and engage at the highest level like we've continually done since I've been president since 2016 fall. Thank you very much, and go to our YouTube channel, smash the subscribe button. Make sure you go to NorCal Guide's YouTube channel, check out all the new videos and content there, and we'll continue to bring you the truth every single day, all the way down the line for all of you. Thank you very much. I wish the best to you, your families, and your fishing season. We'll talk to you here in a couple of weeks. Look for the live video right before the council meeting, and make sure you go make your written comments now on the council website for the April meeting. Thank you very much. Go to NorCal Guides and Sportsmen's Association online, ncgasa.org, to sign up and support us today. Appreciate you all. We'll talk soon.